This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we are live on our Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook channels with Higgs Field. You guys are in from Australia, right?
Yeah, man.
What's going on?
What's going on?
Yeah, it's going pretty good. So you're in an area called Mount Gambier, South Australia.
Yeah, Mount Gambier. It's a big volcano, so a lot of people call us volcano walkers, which is pretty cool.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So we're excited to have you on the air. We do this podcast. We've interviewed people since 2018. Previously just on audio. In 2021 we started doing video, and we are also on Spotify after this, so your fans will be able to see us on Spotify video podcast, not just audio. But just to get it out of the way, we do have a couple of sponsors. One of them is Newsly, which is an iOS app that reads the news back to you in a natural way, so you can stop scrolling and start listening. Use Ghost 2021 to get 1 month free premium subscription. Again, that's Ghost 2021. You can get 1 month free. And then the other sponsor we have is this company out of Germany, or out of Europe, and they are called Double Jack Online. And what's cool about them is if you are a band and you need crowdfunding, they have crowdfunding capability. They can pay you in Bitcoin and multiple currencies around the world. They can create a scan code for you, and they can actually create a custom URL and posters that they can put on your stages when you play and stuff, or online. And you can help fund like your album or tour or anything like that. So that's kind of cool. So you can check that out. And they also are an online philanthropic lottery, so you can play. I think they have Keno, they have the European lottery, and they have Powerball. So just check that out with your cell phone, scan that, and you can get in there, and you can actually become an influencer and get passive income. So as a band, if you need to get passive income from doing something, you can join them, and you can get to be an influencer and get a whole thing. We have a guy, Frank, their marketing director, can get in touch with anybody that's interested in that. But now we're going to actually get to the meat of the interview, which we like to do kind of behind the music interviews that are, just a more in depth than a 15-minute podcast. We can go up to an hour. So that's what we're going to do. And we do have a video from you guys so people can check out what you sound like. And so if that's cool, before we get into the meat of the interview, I want to actually introduce Higgs Field in your sound with your video, The Mason. Is that cool?
Of course it is, mate. Let it play, brother.
Yes, here we go.
A mathematical equation, prediction of devastation. The beaten heads of a stone mason, the beaten heads of all creation. Sculptures of the gods who came before. Lay the foundation to shape the shore. Forgotten and lost to the ways of the Lord. The mason stands changing all. Destruction of past civilizations, changes enforced by the mason. Loss of all consciousness, feelings of helplessness. Sculptures of the gods who came before. Lay the foundations to shape the shore. Forgotten and lost to the ways of the Lord. The mason stands changing all.
So that was the Mason, and we're back. Hey guys.
Hey guys, how you going?
What's going on?
Hey, it's Higgs Field, and we've got them on the line. We just played their video. It's a kind of like and that was a really interesting because I'm a big fan of kind of like grunge and Stone Temple Pilots and Alex in Chains. This sounds kind of in that spirit. Not that I just feel that kind when I hear it. That's just my opinion, but. Yeah.
Thanks
Yeah,
heaps,
nice.
man.
That's good.
I'm a massive grunge head, so that means a lot, man. Thank you.
Yeah, is that sound? I did love that era because I'm a child of the '70s, and then when we got a lot of hair bands like the Motley Crues and the Rats and the Poisons, when Kurt came on the scene, then you had Stone Temple Pilots and Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, all those bands. It just felt like, okay, now we've got a rock renaissance. Like you finally got that kind of attitude that was like more honest. That's what I liked about it.
I mean, we can't talk about that without saying R.I.P. to Mark Lanigan. I mean, what an absolute poet, I reckon.
Mm-hmm.
They're Screaming Trees.
The Screaming Trees.
Age.
Yeah, it's like, that kind of vibe is like you just feel that the honesty of the music and there's the passion. And then what I liked about grunge is like you could have Beatle chords. You could kind of go in any direction, even though it's kind of like a punk, post-punk alternative thing. You could go in different directions.
100%.
Yeah.
A band like the Smashing Pumpkins, which kind of went more progressive rock, but Soundgarden could do like a Zeppelin. Like it's like a punk, like a grunge Zeppelin, and that's what I like about it. Because you could have the chord changes, you have the tempo changes, you have more progressive rock ideas, kind of intermixed with like power pop, power punk.
And it's awesome, but it's also important, like being able to implement different genres into music's always been an important thing for us, and something that grunge did back in the day was, they had elements of heavy metal, they had elements of psychedelic pop from the 60s, that had elements of everything, and that era of music, that became extremely experimental. Bands like Primus, Helmet,
Tool,
all that sort of stuff, which Tool are a massive influence on us.
Definitely.
But like, those sorts of bands, when they went down those progressive routes, they just created their own feel, their own sort of music. And look, I don't like saying, oh, that can't be replicated again, but that era can't be replicated again, where you've got, some of the most popular bands in pop culture are these bands that are just writing some magnificent music and creating something new out of something that's mixed in with everything old.
Yeah, because I'm being a keyboardist. I tend to be like kind of coming from like a couple of places. Like I'll come from like a jazz band like Sun Ra, and then get into like a Parliament Funkadelic because of Bernie Worrell, and then like I just love Pink Floyd, right? So
Floyd, what a sick.
And then yes, it's like obligatory if you're going to be a synthesist. Looking at a band like Genesis or Yes.
Yep.
And like the Peter Gabriel Genesis, like Lamb Lies Down on Broadway kind of Genesis, that's so progressive, so like science fiction oriented. That's just kind of like where my head was at. Is like, because I just saw these bands. It's like, what's wrong with a 15-minute song? 20-minute song with all these like tempo changes and different types of structures, more classical and mixing rock and everything,
And the beautiful thing about that experimentation is look what it did for artists like Steven Wilson. So he's in Porcupine Tree, and you might have a song that goes for 4 minutes or whatever, but then the next song goes for 17 and a half minutes, and it's unbelievable. You can't turn it off. Like it's experimenting with different sounds, bit of jazz, bit of this, that, the other. It's cool. Nothing like it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I just love that. So you guys are in the kind of alternative rock, but that leaves you a lot of room, like you said, because you did you indicate like who your inspirations are. But I'm going to go and start with the question. So when did you guys first get into music? Who wants to start? Like, what age did you get into the idea like you wanted to play music?
Well, I'll start, I suppose, because I got the microphone. But I started probably, I was really, really young. I was probably about 8 when I wanted to start playing the guitar. And I didn't do anything about it until I was 12. And, you know, when I was 12, I was, you know, Metallica are one of the most important gateway bands, I think, of all time. You know, that got me into metal and got me into then the other stuff that, you know, I ended up falling in love with, which is, like you said, that grunge era sort of stuff. So I started then. I wrote my first song when I was 12. You know, basically picked up the guitar and started recording straight away. It was like shit. It was awful, but I did it. Like, you know, the amount of music that I've made over the years that's shit is incredible. And then I think this is the first project that I've been on, first band I've been in, where I'm actually really, really proud of the music, and like not ashamed of any of it. And I think that's more of a collaborative effort with all of us. We all have songwriting credits, and that's because we all get in the jam room. We all, you know, someone might come up with a riff or a drum beat or something that this, that, the other, and then it's like, right, hey, let's try this out. And, you know, it's just for fun, but then, you know, it turns into a pretty well-written song pretty quickly, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, pass the mic.
Yeah. I reckon I first got into music when I was about 12, I reckon. Played on my first drum kit like at a mate's place that we go water skiing with. And he just taught me like a couple of basic beats and that, and just sort of I picked it up half quickly. And then he wasn't using his kit for a while, and he was kind enough to let me borrow it and set it up in mum and dad's lounge room, which like pissed them the hell off. So no, but it was worth it. So yeah, I just sort of started practicing more, and then really just like started listening to a lot of like metal and rock bands that were like up and coming or popular at the time. A lot of like, say, Parkway Drive, Amity Affliction, sort of like mid ranges when they were coming out. And just, I really got into them, and then started just learning covers off YouTube and that. And then, just a few people asking around, you know, for drummers and that in the Mount, and got into my first couple of bands and that when I was about 13 or 14. And then, I've been in a few bands since. And then, Liam and Kyle were nice enough to hit me up. And I've been in Higgs Field since, it was 2018, was it?
Yeah,
or 19, yeah. And here we are.
So though it's interesting, I always wondered, like, what kind of drove you to kind of be a drummer? Were you, when you listened to music, were you drawn to the drums, or you felt like that's the instrument you wanted?
Oh, well, just because I guess like drum and bass is such like it's the backing for like all music, really. Doesn't matter what genre. And just like, I don't know, I'd never really like seen a drum kit properly like up close until I went to my dad's mate's place there, and I just thought, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. Like, you know, everyone sort of has an acoustic guitar laying around and that, and it's sort of more common to see, but like a full-fledged drum kit setup was just like really, obviously really drawing. Really.
It's like fate. You kind of fated to have that moment and then say, hey, there it is. Then you have
Yeah, exactly. I just thought, this is pretty cool. And
I think that's what happens.
Fell in love with it, really.
I think it happens with like keyboard players and stuff. Like if there's a piano around or an organ around, or you go play in church or something, then you learn how to play the organ, and then you play the keyboard, and then you can go to a synth. This because you had access to it. You know, it's kind of like that, but it's not as common as everybody jumping on a guitar.
100%. Yeah, exactly. It's just a lot more drawing, more you put your focus a lot more.
So maybe ask. I didn't ask you guys about like Higgs Field. How did you guys come up with the band name? What does that actually represent? Because maybe people here and outside of Australia don't know what it represents.
I'll give the mic back to Liam for this. It's time for science talk.
So I look like a dumbass, but I am a massive science nut. I love the stuff. So the Higgs Field is based on the Higgs boson. So Professor Higgs many years ago, he had this theory about the formation of matter. So if you imagine a fish in water, the fish is always surrounded by water, but because it's always in that environment, it doesn't recognize that it's water. It doesn't know that. It just, this is what it is. So similar to us, we have a imaginary field that surrounds everything and is the foundation of matter, is the thing that holds everything together. It stops when I move my arm. It stops all the matter from dissipating into nothingness, and then it brings it, keeps a straight form, which is pretty cool. So it's like the legitimate thing that connects everything to everything, and that it expands out through the universe. And I love that. And I'll put that in a hat.
Yeah.
And I think the other band name we were going to have was Ever Ice. That was
right.
Carl Gleed, our bass player. He's a beautiful man. He had that idea. He's had that for a long time. And I was like, I've had this for a long time too, man. And it was like, right, well, we'll put it in a hat and see what we draw. And we drew that. And it was like, yes.
That's cool. That's really cool. I was wondering if it was that or if it was happened to be something else that I just didn't understand. But yeah, that's really cool. That's an awesome story for a band name.
Thanks.
So I always get into a couple other questions. Like, so you've been working on music for like since you guys found that you were able to get into it. How long have you like since you were like 12 years old then? Like you guys have been doing it?
Well, I'm 27 now, so what's that? About 15 years or something. So long time. But it's it's funny, man. I went back and listened through some of the first stuff that I recorded, and I had a bit of a night on the beers and was like, right, like what kind of music have I made over the years? So I've made everything from electronica sort of stuff, similar to like the soundtrack to Stranger Things.
Oh, okay.
And then I've moved on to grindcore, and like I made them 2 albums at the exact same time. So in a space of about 4 weeks. So horribly mixed. They sound like shit, but the idea was just to create. Just to create. And that's something that I've done since I was a kid, like even drawing and things like that was just, I started out with a piece of paper, put some dots or a line down there and just try and make something out of it. And I think that's always been part of the shit that I do, as dumb as it can be sometimes.
Well, I think it's interesting what I find from people who are creators, right, that are singer-songwriters, bands that write their own music, is that it's not necessarily that they're all trying to be like in the top 10. It's that they have something inside themselves, that they have their heroes and the people that inspired them, and it's like, okay, I can do it. It's like when the Clash came on the scene, right? And in Sex Pistols, the people said, well, I can do that, right? Because before that, you look at a band like Yes, and so I can't do that, right? I look at a band like Zeppelin, I can't be Jimmy Page. I can't be John Bonham. There's no way I'm going to ever get to that. But then when you had guys like, Lou Reed and the Velvets, and you had, like Johnny Rotten, and you got, Joe Strummer and in the Clash, he's like, oh, and you go to CBGBs and you see the Ramones, and like, oh, I could actually do that, right?
Yeah.
So then you get people saying, well, I'm going to try it, because like, what's wrong with me just trying to express myself,
I mean, something that
inspiration.
Yeah, 100%. Like something Jack White said a long time ago. I was probably 14, 15, and I was just on YouTube and watching just Jack White videos because I love the dude. And a video came up where the dude's talking about like the happiness of a mistake, and how sometimes a mistake can just be perfection, like that's showing how raw you're being, that's showing your emotion, that is showing absolutely everything. Every time you play a live show and that live show goes a bit wrong, that's okay, because mistakes happen and mistakes are good, and that's a unique performance for them. That just probably lit my confidence up a little bit too much. So it went from I'll never be able to play that perfectly to fuck it doesn't matter if I don't play it perfectly, you're welcome. You know what I mean? It's probably a bad attitude, really, but it's just like, perfection's not good, and it never has been. And
I'm a big
really.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in that because if you think about like the Stones, right? And you think about a lot of classic albums from the 70s, it's full of happy accidents, right? If you look at
Of course.
Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
Frank Zappa. He's like one of the most musically talented people on the planet. And you listen back to like some of his older albums and stuff like that from the start of the 70s, late 60s and stuff like that. It's full of mistakes.
Yeah, even if you think about like an album like Todd Rundgren and Hello, It's Me, right? If you listen to it real close, you can hear the cuts in the mix, in the final production. There's like cuts where they're mistakes. They're actually
Is that the love song?
Yeah, that love song, Hello, It's Me. Right, but
Yeah.
it's like a typical 70s thing. If you go listen to the album real close on your headphones, a lot of the albums are not perfect. And actually the imperfections are what makes them great, and then the problem I try to tell producers today, like they're stuck in the DAW and trying to get a perfect 160 BPM, and they're trying to make sure everything's in tone, using the auto tune, doing all this stuff. And I'm like, I think of a band like Husker Du or Black Flag. Did they care about that? No, they didn't. It's like
didn't give a fuck.
They didn't
give a fuck. Yeah.
Don't obsess about doing something 1,000 times. It's like on the third take, if it's cool and it had the heart, keep the third take.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Man. Like we're both big fans of Bring Me the Horizon. Especially their older stuff. Like their older stuff was just heavy. And something that they've done with a lot of their new stuff is chuck a lot of auto tune on, which sounds great on the album, but it sounds very produced to me anyway. They're kind of lucky they've got Ollie Sykes as the vocalist because he can pull off anything, which is really, really lucky. But most other bands, they wouldn't be able to do it. And when I do hear, especially not in a live sense. And like when I hear bands that are, chucking in auto tune, not saying they're trying to copy Ollie Sykes and stuff like that, but they do, a lot of if you're in the genre, you tend to do what the giants do, if that so to speak. Yeah, and it sounds horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just I always get kind of cringe when I go see a band and it's like exactly like the studio version. Because they're running their backing tracks and they're locked into their backing tracks, and I'm like, I'm a guy that would go see the Allmans, right? I would go see Funkadelic and see Bootsy Collins, and those guys would be doing like 20-minute songs, and it wasn't anywhere near what was on the record, right? They just totally went in a different direction, and that's why I went to see them, because like Dead, like going to see the Grateful Dead, like I'm a Deadhead, I would go see the Dead, and because they would just jam. And because that's what it is,
exactly. It's like, otherwise you might as well just listen to the record. Like,
it's like, why am I going to go see the Allmans to see the Allmans just replicate exactly what's on record? Because Dickie Betts and those guys, they would just go off, and maybe they'd come back and bring it in, but if they just wanted to go off in a different direction, they'd just do it. That's kind of like what's wrong with that.
and it's feeling out and connecting with the crowd. We talk a lot of shit mid set. We like to have a bit of fun, have a bit of a talk. Ask the dumb questions on the microphone you probably shouldn't ask and things like that. But it's fun, and we're just people, and they're just people, and it's like we're just as important as the president of the United States, and we're just as important as the crackhead that lives on the road. You know what I mean? Like everyone's on the same level, and everyone should treat each other like that, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I just think it's just, to me, it's like I love kind of a stream of consciousness style of recording. I tend to do like a jam band style. I actually will do live recording sessions that kind of drive, like if you're, I think what happens, like if you're a producer and you're stuck on your DAW, then you kind of get lost in the DAW. But if you go and you force yourself to go live and do a rehearsal, then you're not going to keep on stopping and starting. You're going to just let it go. And I find, like I used to read about Zappa, and Zappa was like, hey, I'm just going to do it. Right. Even like Neil Young and Crazy Horse, they would just put down and then go back to the tapes and say, here's the song. But, jam for like 2 hours and then say, oh, there's some songs in here and let's work on those after. But what's
Right.
wrong with kind of doing
Yeah, it
that
takes
to
your mind
being
off it a bit.
obsessive about trying to? Not that it's bad if you've got an idea and you start building it track by track, but I just think that kind of a stream of consciousness, even like a Dylan on his typewriter, Bob Dylan would just go on his typewriter and just start like whatever. I'm just going to do it. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean
just
that.
whatever feels natural.
Yeah, that's
Like,
right.
yeah, just sometimes just jamming with it is just so much easier than really trying to like perfect that one thing.
Like that's something we do a lot, man. Like we don't go sit down and record in a studio and start recording. We get in the jam room and we fuck around with a song for sometimes months. Sometimes here's something that we were starting to play a year ago.
Yeah,
We've developed it into this now. Like, what do we reckon? Oh yeah, we'll still muck around with it, see where it goes.
Yeah.
Super important.
Yeah, I mean, so then I kind of wanted to get into some of your influence and reference points because I know it's in your bio, but like who really inspired you as like young musicians to kind of not that you want to emulate them exactly, but like who are the bands that really got people you could point out as influences or reference points?
So I'll start this. We're all really different, and that is probably what makes our music a bit different. It's not made for everyone, and it shouldn't be. It's made for us, and the crowds that we play for, and they are the ones that become fans, and those are generally the same sort of people. So for me, I grew up listening to Iron Maiden, Grinspoon, Silverchair, a lot of the some metal and mixed in with some 90s grunge and rock and things like that, especially from here in Australia. We had some great artists, and we got a radio station called Triple J, and growing up, that's all we listened to. Well, for me anyway, that's all I listened to. So I was introduced to a lot from that. When I was about maybe 12 or 13, I got introduced to System of a Down.
Oh yeah,
blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. So I've always wanted to be in a weird band after that, because you can go back and listen to Iron Maiden and all that sort of stuff, but you wouldn't say that they're weird. I would say System of a Down are brilliant. They sound great, but they're also pretty weird. And that ever since I was that age, that's the sort of music that I've chased, is kind of weird music that sounds really good, like really well written, really well produced. And I think that's kind of what led me to the point in this band. And then for Frosty, I'll hand you the mic.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, like I said, I just sort of started getting into whatever was popular at the time. Just sort of getting into like a lot of Aussie metalcore to sort of deathcore sort of stuff to start with, like Parkway, Amity Affliction, a lot of that sound. I Prevail was sort of coming out then, like Beartooth, and then a lot of Bring Me the Horizon, of course, at the time. And then I don't know, I sort of like jammed that for a while. And then I was like, I guess moved on to the next thing, and like started going back and listening to like the older bands with a lot of like more technical timing and beats and that, like Liam said, with System, and then like listening to Tool as well, like coming up with that alternative progressive sound, and like a lot of the drums in prog metal songs like that are just they're quite like out of the ordinary, like offbeat sort of stuff, and it's just like, oh yeah, like it's a completely different avenue to go down. And then I mean, you can appreciate different drums from like every genre, really. Like they all have their strong points, that's for sure. Mainly I just can't get past metal though. I'm just a massive metalhead, so yeah.
That's interesting because I kind of grew up, like, I'm a child of the 70s, right? So like my favorite drummers were like Mitch Mitchell, John Bonham, and Keith Moon.
Yeah, John Bonham was great.
And Keith Moon always used to do it for me because I felt like the Who was like the first punk band. And if you think about Moon's attitude was like he was just soloing through the whole song. If you ever like watch Keith Moon, he just solos like to the whole song. He doesn't actually keep time like Ringo or even like Bonham. He, actually like Entwistle and he's actually soloing too. It's actually Pete that's keeping the time with his chords. And I was like, well, that's kind of punky because it's like they're kind of the weird thing about the Who, they were kind of exploding and falling apart, but staying together.
Yeah, definitely.
And like early Who, you can hear it on like the My Generation and Sell Out and stuff like that. The early records, they're very punky. It's like the Clash before the Clash.
Man, like Ringo Starr as a drummer. Let's just talk about that for a second, because how fucking amazing is he? And how, right? Everyone always talks about George Harrison and Paul McCartney and John Lennon and all that sort of stuff. He is my favorite Beatle because his drumming technique is incredible. Left leading hand, the way he plays, the way he looks when he plays. The dumb haircut that's just going. I love it.
Like the stick,
But yeah,
exactly.
Ringo used to incorporate a lot of like Motown kind of stacked drumming. He was able to do a lot of interesting kind of Motown like drumming and introduce it into the kind of pop, like the power pop that the Beatles were doing, and that he could keep the time, but he had all kinds of interesting things going on, like a Motown drummer. Like if you get the Purdy Shuffle, you get into like a lot of the technical capabilities of the Motown drummers, that Ringo would seem to be listening to them, and he incorporating a lot of that stuff into what the Beatles sound like. And when you start looking at it, you're like, wow, he's actually, because everybody will talk about Moon and Bonham because they were like power drummers, but Ringo's a finesse, and he's making these pop hits that were like so big because of that. His timing is like making those songs work.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to like have influence come from everywhere. I think that's why like we work so well as a band, because we're all influenced from somewhere different, and just opens up different avenues for everyone else. Like just introduces them to something new, and then all gels as one, really.
But you guys, what's interesting to me,
Higgs Field, bringing everyone together.
You were talking before about your band writing process, and I find that's really interesting when you have a band, right? Because sometimes in a band you have like an alpha, like a Pete Townsend that writes everything, right?
Oh no, I don't I am the alpha, though. I am the alpha. I will fight anybody.
He likes losing gears.
You're kind of writing everything. You've directed everything.
Oh no, I don't write any of it. I'll just fight. I'll beat them all in a fight. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it.
But what's cool is, like you said, you guys are like everybody comes in and has their piece to the like is that what your process is? You jam and everybody kind of brings their feel to it, to a song.
Yeah, definitely. You just like build off one another, really. Like say if Dylan comes with a riff, or Liam comes with a riff or anything, or even if I come with a beat, or like there's been songs where like Kyle's sort of done the introduction, I guess you could say, and we all just build off one another, really.
Yeah, you kind of vibe off each other. That's why I like about like the old school recording with like a full like traditional rock band is like, in this world now that everybody's in their DAW, you have somebody in London and somebody in Paris and somebody here, and nobody's ever in the same room, and you have like 5 different producers and they're all like adding all this stuff, but nobody was in the same room, right? And
Exactly.
I'm kind of I like the day like when like the Stones were all in the same house. Well, maybe Keith was in the basement, but
100%.
It's just so much more raw that way, natural.
Yeah, it's way more raw and natural. But like the other thing is too, like we're all real close mates. Like this is the. I think what people are hearing. Yeah, it's weird music. It's cool music. We're not a massive band, we love playing live shows, but we don't play the biggest stages in the world or anything like that. We're very bit of an underground gem, I think we would call it. But I think what people love is the chemistry that we've all got, and that all comes from, instead of when I say footy over here, we've got AFL, which is Australian rules football, and instead of going to footy practice every Wednesday night, we have band practice every Wednesday night. So we have a couple of beers together, have a big laugh. write some really cool stuff. And the best thing is like, our singer, Dylan, he not only can he sing like a motherfucker, that dude can play guitar like a motherfucker. Like the dude is just, he's a bit of a, I don't know, he's just onto it. He is always onto it. And then same as, I'm going to talk you up here, mate. Don't let your head get too massive. It'll fall off. But
it won't fit on the screen.
It won't fit on the screen. But Frosty's one of the best drummers I've seen live. And that comes from, and that's a big statement to make because I've seen a lot of great ones. But what I tend to see is a lot of very static drummers. They're playing the beats. They're doing some incredible shit. But, you can see Frosty's, getting into it. And that was the first time I seen him play before he was in Higgs Field with us. I was like, fuck yeah, that dude's sick. I didn't even know the dude's name. I was like, yeah, that dude's sick. I like it. And, when I found out that he was available, I was like, yoink, grab him. And then, Kyle's been in lots of other bands as well in the past. I'm probably the odd duck out because all the bands that I had in the past was just basically just me, which is not good. But, his style of bass playing, I love that. And this is kind of just like, not only is it a magical thing to be able to get us all together and be able to write some music that we think are pretty good. Yeah, but, other people might not, but other people do, which is nice, 9 out of 10 on Heavy Mag, not bad. Yeah. But, being able to do that and then also be great mates,
I think having the chemistry as a band, that's the whole idea of a band, right?
100%.
There's so many.
You definitely see that in the live shows too.
Yeah, you definitely see that in the live shows. It's bloody funny. We have a lot of fun, man.
That's good.
Because, in the genres that are kind of controlling like the industry today, don't have band dynamics. They're usually like one or two people and a producer. And people have forgotten, what makes, a band like the Stones or the Clash, that dynamic of having.
It's all corporations now. It's all corporations running it.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
It's even like when you had, even in the 80s, when you had like these kind of corporate bands that were created too. Even the late 70s, you got a bunch of corporate bands. But it's like they don't even, now they don't even play.
That's right. Yeah, where are they now? Sort of thing.
You used to have a bunch of studio musicians, that would come together and create these kind of super groups that are backed by the big label. But at least they were players. And now there's like just a bunch of producers, or people who aren't really. Or they're other type of artists. There might be a lyricist and somebody that they can do really interesting vocal delivery, but nobody's coming on the stage like Hendrix. Nobody's coming on like Jim Morrison. Like where's the next Jim Morrison? Where's the next Hendrix? Where's the next Kurt Cobain?
I don't know if there's enough acid left after them dudes.
Yeah,
smashed it all.
Probably not.
No one can handle it.
No.
But that's why I like talking to bands like yourself that are still believe in that kind of, that dynamic, that you should, have a band that has that kind of classic structure of your bass and drums and vocalist. And because there's something that comes out of that kind of organic nature, to me, of a group that's actually putting it down. And it's the happy accidents, and it's not going to be run into an 808 or a 909 or a 7.8 drum machine. You actually got a real drummer. You got that dynamic thing that on stage you guys can just go wherever you want to go, and you're not locked into.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
The other thing is too, like you play with each other long enough where you can read each other. Quite often. I'll throw a cheeky little grin and a bit of a wink at Frosty, and it's like I know what's about to happen on the kit regardless. You know what I mean? I'm about to do some weird shit or something a bit different, bit off, and it's just like, oh, catch it. So yeah,
yeah, it is really gel.
Yeah.
So you guys able to play shows now? Where in Australia can you actually play live gigs?
So we've been pretty lucky and a little bit unfortunate as well. So we've been able to play some really good shows, between here and Adelaide pretty well, which is the capital city of South Australia, which is where we're from. But with the way COVID's been, I mean, it's been, I'm going to be real critical here. Our government's been very communist-like in that they have locked out certain states. They have not allowed lots of things to happen, and they've failed. So like we've had a lot of COVID running rampant in South Australia at the moment. And the only reason why they've eased any restrictions at all has been because they, I guess that it's coming up to an election and they want to win. They've kept a lot of control and they've stopped a lot of things. We've had to play seated shows, and we've managed to play a lot of stand-up shows and stuff like that, which has been great. But it's just the way it is at the moment. So once everything ticks off, like we can't wait to just, going on holiday with the boys. At the end of the day, going on holiday with the boys, traveling to different cities, doing this, that, the other, and playing some live shows again. That'd be great. Be great.
Yeah,
we do have some coming up, but
that's cool. That's good. At least it's good that you're out there, because like in our neck of the woods, I used to be able to go to Boston and New York, and I'm a northeastern guy, and most of the place I go is like Boston or New York, and I'm from like New Hampshire, and New Hampshire, all we got is people trying to be like Neil Young. Not that it's bad. But I'm doing like electronic kind of Trent Reznor stuff, and the people here don't want to hear that. So if I want to play, I gotta go to New York or Boston.
Speaking of Neil Young, what the fuck's he done with the Spotify thing? Now Neil Young to me was Flower Child, who bit of a punk rocker, bit of a folk rocker as well, but was very much about free speech. And then he's just turned around and gone, nah.
Yeah,
changed my mind.
Well, when you get 70, you do different things.
Well, that's true. That's true. I'm 27 and I'm doing different things from when I was 20. So that's probably a good thing, actually.
You get that kind of grumpy old man thing going on,
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
So you kind of go where that takes you. And like I've seen my grandparents, and like they'll like, why are you saying that, Grandpa? I'm like, I don't know. Like, okay, like leave Grandpa alone, just walk away.
That's it. But, leave him in the chair.
Yeah, because he don't understand. He said turn it down anyway, so it's like, okay, Grandpa, just stay away from me. But yeah, so it's interesting that you guys been able to play, because we've been doing a lot of online because that's kind of where I live in this podcast world. And we've been doing like online concerts with our podcast guests. We just did one a couple of weeks ago where we had like 19 different podcast guests do this PEG festival that we do, like a second one we've ever done. And we're going to probably do it like 4 times a year.
That's cool.
When we have bands all over the world that we've interviewed actually do like a live set from their studio or their bedroom or their garage or whatever, and they just play for like 30 minutes. And we give them a chance to get heard on like a 3-day online thing. So we've been pushing that because it gives people a place to figure out how to actually even try to navigate playing on the net, but which is a whole different thing. But
of course.
The other thing I wonder is, like, do you guys like ever like do features with other bands or play with other bands or work producing other acts, or are you just focused on yourselves?
Oh, we definitely play with other bands, but haven't done a feature yet.
No, I think we spend a lot of time together right now stuff. So we're pretty close with quite a few bands from around our region, actually. But like, so as far as we quite often try and do some gigs with the same people, like a band called Paste, Chelsea Manor, Stiff Nips, Rat Salad. They're from Western Australia. They're a little bit away. We just did a couple of gigs with them back in October, and that was a bit of a wild night, but great time. So like, as far as that is concerned, if one of our friends came up and said to us like, "Hey Frosty, we want you to play the drums for a cover song that we're doing tonight," like he's done that before. If they came up to me and said, "Liam, we want to." The pay show, and like if someone if a friend of ours came up to me and said, "Hey, look, I want you to play this riff on, we're recording it, we want you to do that," I'd put my hand up and say, "Yeah, no worries." But I don't know if I would do it for someone that I'm not friends with, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, you got to be in tune with the band. Like if you're gonna do a collaboration, unless you're like on a label that kind of forces you to do them.
Well, and we're not that important either. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's people. We've gotten a few messages from people on Instagram and all that sort of stuff asking for it and all that sort of stuff. But I'm just like, look, man, there's probably someone else better that'll put a bit more effort in. Whereas if it's for our friends, we're going to put that effort in.
Yeah. You got to kind of have a relationship with the people you collaborate with. It's usually like what I've done is like, kind of a collective of musicians like in the Northeast of the US. If I play with these guys, like, okay, I might guest on one of their records because I know them. Right. So they need somebody to play a Moog or something. Okay, I'll do it because I know that band. I played with them before in Boston. I know who they are. I kind of get the feel. Like you have this scene, you're in a scene, and like if you know the guys in the bands, it's like, hey, that's cool. I'll do that. But yeah, you kind of got to know people to feel comfortable, unless you're out there just trying to get income from it.
Otherwise, it just turns into a lot more of a job, I feel.
Yeah, like, it becomes like a job.
Jam with your mates, it's all good. Instead of like just someone you're unfamiliar with, just saying, "Oi, play this." It almost feels like you're being hired to do a job, like rather than just.
Yeah, you become like a session guy. There's some people that's what they want. They want to become like a professional musician. They want to be a session guy. They want to have like an appointment book, and I'm playing with this guy this week, this whatever I'm doing, and they're trying to do that because that's what they choose to do. But a lot of people are like, this is my project. This is my band. If I happen to sync with somebody else, I'm not really thinking about it. But if it happens in my scene, that's cool. But I'm not going to try to make it into a job, Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I mean, like the sort of music we make, we're not gonna make much money. It's gonna cost us money, but like I tell you what, we'll have a fucking fun time playing the live shows and doing this, that, the other. We're gonna have a fucking blast doing that. And when we're like, 50, we're gonna be able to look back and it'll be like, hey, you remember that time we went and did this? And it's like, oh.
Well, I think that's the whole point. Like when you get into music, when people get into rock, originally rock and roll, you did it because it's an attitude. Like the Grateful Dead, why did they do that? They had this like hippie attitude, and that's what they were going to do. Even like a band like Funkadelic, it was this big collective of all these musicians, like 20 guys on stage, and it was like we just like playing, and then people started vibing to it, and they got like a Deadhead kind of thing, and I was following. And it was like, it was just a scene. Funkadelic was like a scene. You just followed it because, damn, those guys are like space funk. And it's, what the hell is that? And it's like, that's weird. And I'm like, I'm going to get into that. Because it's different. Nobody was doing like, we're 100%. From outer space. It's like acid, funk, rock, psychedelic stuff. And it's like, what the hell? It's like, I don't know. It's Star Showers coming down and you see the spaceship coming down on stage, and you're like, "What the fuck is this?" It's like, I don't know, but it's cool as hell. It's like, okay, kind of like Kiss,
the old space baby.
Yeah, it was back in the day when Kiss showed up in the '70s, and if you're a child in the '70s and suddenly Kiss shows up, you're like, "What the fuck is that?" They're spitting blood on
of course.
They're like, "What the hell is this?" It's like, yeah, that's
and
it.
Now look what we got. We got. Was it Brass Against the Machine where she pissed on old mate's head?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I saw that. Yeah,
love it.
You bring that back. You're bringing that old school.
I got jealous. I was like, shit, why couldn't it be me?
Well, back in the day when Ozzy was biting off the heads of birds and throwing them back,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like things don't get crazy. Like, well, maybe they do because she was like doing what you just said.
Going off his nut, mate.
Yeah. So I always ask this question, but I don't know what you guys would be like thinking about it, but like the thoughts of the future of music, because a lot of things today are playlisted. People are just listening to one song and moving to the next band. What are your thoughts on the future of music? Because your fans probably are like into your whole record, right? Your whole everything that you're doing, not just listening to one song. They come see you because you do a whole performance.
I think future of music. I reckon. As far as we're concerned, I think albums are going to be out the window. I think there's going to be bands like us that are going to be like, well, fuck that, we're going to still do it anyway. But I reckon we're going to be looking at, instead of an artist releasing one album, they're going to release 12 singles for the year, like once a month.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing, but I think that's probably more likely. I think that the positive thing from COVID has been the streaming stuff. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that rather than live shows in person, which is a shame. And as you know, and as everyone else knows, that's a different vibe, totally different vibe. Like, we haven't streamed a Higgs Field show, not on purpose, but I'm very apprehensive to do that, just because I'm like, if you want to see us live, you should come down and feel the bass drum in your chest. You should feel that tingle in your back when Dylan sings. You should do all that, and that's quite positive, because you can't get that on a live stream. Not unless you got wicked like Kenwoods or something like that, where you can just crank it up to 11 and just go. So I think there's that. As far as music writing, I think that's where shit's going to get really interesting. Long time ago, Mike Patton said, there will come a time where everything is written on a computer. All your biggest hits are going to be written on a computer and all that sort of stuff. With how auto-tune's going, I think it's really possible. And, we're starting to see AIs being designed who make grindcore. So we're talking about an artificial intelligent machine that is creating grindcore music and pop music and all that sort of stuff. Maybe that is the way we're going to go down. But I also think that there's always going to be the guy that is playing the acoustic guitar singing. There's always going to be the guy that wants to be in a rock or a metal band or something like that. So that's always going to happen as well.
Yeah, I'm a big.
I don't know. What do you think?
As far as the future of music goes, then everything's becoming a bit robotic sometimes, really.
Yeah, that's what I've been fighting against as an electronic musician. Is like a lot of times we get pinned into the thing. It's like we're all sampling, we're all doing that. But like I'm old school, like a Tony Banks, and there's Stevie Wonder on a Dream Machine. It's like I'm about the hardware sense. If you think about like Keith Emerson and even Pete Townsend, Barbara O'Reilly, or Won't Get Fooled Again, the kind of work, right? So like this kind of work that was on Pink Floyd is like there's a lot of electronic musicians that are starting to come back. And the one thing I've been very happy is a company like Moog was out of business, right? They came back. There's tons of like synthesists who are using these analog synths that are writing, progressive rock like Genesis type stuff. If that are more Pink Floyd type stuff is happening. It's not maybe reaching the top 10, but there's a lot of people who have access to these synths and are trying to create more progressive type work that you saw in the 70s.
Yeah,
so I'm hopeful that kind of stuff is coming back.
And I think it is. I mean, we can see it. I mean, just trying to think. I mean, bands. There's 60,000 songs released to Spotify every single day, and you got to filter through the shit. But in amongst that shit is some gold, and like great independent artists that are creating music that's pretty unique, which is great.
Yeah, I think what the weird thing is now you got these like Reels and TikTok, and they can come out of left field and allow somebody to kind of break through in a hyper way that maybe you don't expect, and just the SoundClouds of the world where you can get like put stuff out in a demo form and kind of build up a reputation, and then eventually kind of get out there on the road and then you have people see you. So there's just so many different ways to kind of hit with like a mixtape or SoundCloud or something out there and just get to an audience. Even like in this form, I've been able to do this long form interview that allows people to actually see a band deeper than what is even on the record. Actually hear them talking about this stuff. And that to me is what I'm trying to contribute is is just to get as many independent emerging bands seen by the whole world,
Yeah.
and have people like, maybe you shouldn't just listen to the top 10. Maybe you should go
Nah,
listen to these other bands and open up your mind, because there's a lot of cool stuff going on. You may not know about it because people aren't pushing it, but I'm trying to push as much as I can.
Well,
Yeah, definitely.
I mean,
Respect, man. Cheers.
Yeah, 100%. If someone said to me, "Why should I listen to your music?" I always say the same shit. I always go, "Because we're underground as fuck, bro. You want to be a cool hipster? Listen to us, man."
Hipster, yeah. Yeah, it's like, I just think it's like, being a radio guy. I was like a college radio guy, and I would go read Rolling Stone and Spin, and I'd find all the 5-star, 4-star emerging artists that they talked about, and I would just play it. And I would go and find a label like Sub Pop or IRS or SST, and I would just play everything from that label. Like, I'd find it in the label, and like, I'm gonna play in my 2-hour show everything from these labels, and I don't care if anybody likes it or not, and I'm just gonna do it. and I started getting an audience because people were like, yeah, I want it. That stuff is cool. Yeah, Camper Van Beethoven's cool. The Replacements to go, Who's to Do's cool. Black Flag's cool. Yeah, because that stuff, it wasn't hitting super big, but then eventually bands like Who's to Do and Replacements got signed to Warner Brothers. They got these smaller bands that the radio guys, like my college radio guys like me, were pushing them, and they got through. And I think that's, I'm always hopeful that kind of thing can happen again. We can get another Kurt Cobain. You can get another
Yeah, definitely. Well, he had to come from somewhere too, really, didn't he? Like,
come from Sub Pop.
See, I think that we're going to stick independent. I think at the end of the day, there's a type of freedom that comes with that, where we can do whatever we want. We can represent our cheeky fuckety selves as however we want, and then it's kind of like it's a bit of a take us or leave us. Whereas I would never want to join a label where we would owe money to a company. We are directed with what producers we can and can't use. I mean, we fucked up the first time we went to go record the first EP because the producer we brought on board was shit, and that's okay. That was our lesson that we learned. And then this next time around, recording this new music, which will be coming out this year, that's been brilliant. Like we got the right team. We got the right people that understood our sound and wanted to do it justice. And it was like, right, that's good. So we wouldn't want to work with the producer that's given to us. We wouldn't want to work with people that we don't trust and told what to wear, this, that, the other. I think the labels are now, that's why we have distribution companies. We don't need labels anymore. It's very much a CD Baby, DistroKid, Gyro Stream, all that sort of stuff. I mean, you might as well.
I think it's the best way, because you get bands like Wilco and Radiohead, they jumped off of labels because they want to do it. Ever since Wilco did their classic album that Warner's didn't want to put out, Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, because they said, oh, it's too weird. And then what happened? Like, the music press said it was like the best thing that had ever come out in that period. And the label looked at it and said, oh, we don't like it. And that kind of tells you what the labels do.
And it's not important.
Very filtered and directed.
Very filtered and directed. Like, it's not important for us to blow up and be the most famous band ever. That's not important to us at all. It's what's important is that we're able to do what we want musically. And then if that, we've had, I won't say the group, but we had a group contact us, and they're like, we want you to pay this amount of money. We want you to do this, and this, and we'll make you famous. And I'm like, I don't want to be famous, man. It's not what it's about. It's about, I want to write the music that I want to write. No, thank you. And we go, well, if you say no to us, then you're going to get this, and this. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck, mate. See ya. and it was, it's sad, because I know that there are other artists out there that they would kill for that. And it's kind of like, when we don't, they go, why? Like, what are you doing? And it's kind of like, but it's just not our thing. We want to do everything in our own way, our own time. Just want to do everything else.
I think what happens is, if you get into the label system, what happens is they get these unrealistic expectations, right? So
Yeah, that's what you
they
have to
might,
do. This and it becomes like a job, like we were saying before.
yeah, I mean, they might make you a hit, but then what happens is you never match that hit. And then
Nah.
you start owing them money, right? So it's like even a guy like Prince, right? He did Purple Rain, hit like 8 million. Then Warner Brothers expected him to make 8 million every time. That was never going to happen, right?
Yep.
It doesn't usually happen. And so then suddenly, oh, you're not successful when you do 3
Yeah.
million. You're not successful when you do 2 million. You're only successful if you do 8. And so then
Yeah.
you're set up to fail. And he's like, and eventually even Prince said, fuck that.
Yep.
And left is because I'm not running that. I'm doing what I want.
No.
Like, he ended
And
up going where did what he wanted. You know,
even them saying to him, right, you know, the old stuff that you've recorded, we're not going to accept that because it's not current. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about fucking Prince. He's a legend, you know, like whatever music he makes, people will love because it's Prince. And you got this company going, yeah, but it might not be up to scratch with modern music at that point. So the album that you made 3 years ago is invalid now. It's like, no, it's Prince.
Yeah, now they release everything that they wouldn't release. You know,
Yeah,
now
exactly. Because they can make money off it and they don't owe him anything.
Yeah, now they're doing all the projects that he fought that tried to put out. Now they suddenly do it. But I digress. But my whole thing with the way the labels are is that they just don't get it when you're trying to do something, you know, dynamic or interesting. They just want you to replicate what's in the top 10. You know, and they'd want to take a band and run it carbon copy to death. A style, a genre, and it's not fun. You know, to me, it's not fun if you get on that train, because like the whole thing with the musicians, like, I always look at a band like the Velvet Underground. Lou Reed did exactly what he wanted. It didn't go anywhere, and then eventually the world said, "Wow, that was fantastic," right? And so now, then suddenly, like, you know, in the '70s, in the '80s, he was like, "Oh, he's an icon." But nobody was, only people bought the records are people who were in bands, you know. but then it became like a standard bearer. Like the same thing happened to Alex Chilton and Big Star. You know, if you ever heard of that story, it's the same kind of thing as Lou Reed and the Velvets. He created this band called Big Star, and he had been in the band like the Box Tops. He was famous for this song called The Letter, but he created this really awesome band that was kind of like a clone of the Beatles. But they sounded like fantastic, and it was like American version of the Beatles. And all these Rolling Stone, all these magazines said these are 5-star records. They did like 3 records, nobody ever heard them except other artists like guys in Smashing Pumpkins, a lot of grunge guys, a lot of people started name checking them. Paul Westerberg name checked him in a bunch of songs but it's like, you know, later these people created this work that gets recognized, but it was never popular. You know, but it's like, to me, it's like you just do what's in your heart, and you that is more like what's important, because the world will eventually recognize your nuggets of gold.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
that's right.
So thank you guys for being on the program.
Hopefully.
Well, thank you for being on.
Man, we loved it.
Yeah, we've been on here for like an hour, but I wanted to let everybody know, like if you guys have a release in the future, we do have bands come back. So we've done like episodes where we do release episodes for EPs or albums. So when you're ready to put out your project, let us know and we can help like hype it for you.
Yeah, sick.
Sounds good.
Probably try and get Dylan and Kyle on next time. You talk to us, the 2 most handsome men in the band. So it's like let's get the other fellas on.
Well, we do have the ability to actually have multiple windows open, so we can have up to 8 people on.
Oh yeah.
So if you guys happen to have guys in a different location, they actually can join, and it's a little, we have to kind of control it, but it's possible to have like, a third window with another set of 2 guys in.
So I think that'd be right up Dylan's alley anyway, with his whole studio set up and everything going. Yeah.
Yeah, we cool.
No, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. And again, I'll send you the Spotify link, and I'll be promoting it on my channel as soon as it's out there. And thank everybody for checking us out. Do make sure you do click on the link, and anywhere you see Higgs Field, subscribe, download, purchase merch, do anything you can to support the bands. We always tell you all the time, if you support YouTubers with tips, make sure you support the bands that I talk to. Make sure you subscribe, download, stream, favorite, playlist, that's how you help a band out. So please do that.
That's it, man. I mean, the best thing you can do is listen to us and follow us, and then come see a live show, man. Come say hello too. We're not shy.
Yeah, definitely. Always keen on a couple of
Okay,
beers.
guys. If I'm ever in your neck of the woods, I will come see you.
Yeah, beautiful.
No
if we
worries.
get over there with buddy, hit us up.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Cool, guys.
Definitely.
See you, dudes.
Cheers, mate.
Yep.